The door does not just shake. It cracks. Wood splitting, hinges screaming, and behind it, a crowd that sounds less like people and more like a storm with hands. You hear them before you see them. Hundreds of voices stacked on top of each other, shouting your name the way people shout the name of something they used to fear and now simply hate. Your guards are gone. You do not know when they left, only that they are not here now. And the only sound louder than the crowd is your own heartbeat slamming against your ribs. You run. Not like a leader, not like a man who once made laws with a single signature. You run like anyone would, barefoot, through your own kitchen, past a table still set with breakfast nobody will eat, towards the back door you have never once used in your life because you never thought you would need to escape your own home. The door opens into cold morning air, and for 1 second, one single second, you think you might actually make it. Then something hard and fast slams into the side of your head. A stone. Thrown by someone in the crowd who has clearly been waiting for this angle. Your vision splits into white light, and you go down hard onto the stone path. And the last thing you hear before everything blurs is the sound of dozens of feet turning the corner, some of them carrying sticks, all of them coming straight for you. Before you find out what happens next, let's go back. Pour yourself a coffee. Sit back. Because what led to that door being broken down did not start today, or even this year. It started the day you stopped being a boy and became something people were forced to bow to. You remember the exact morning it began. You were young, maybe too young, standing in a hall so large your own footsteps echoed back at you like an audience. Men who were old enough to be your grandfather lowered their heads the moment you walked in. Not out of love, out of training. You noticed that even your father's statue, standing tall in the courtyard, got the same treatment. People bowed to stone the same way they bowed to flesh. That was your first real lesson about power in this country. It did not matter whether the thing in front of you could feel anything. What mattered was that it could destroy you if you looked at it wrong. When your father finally died, the whole country cried on command, and you sat on his throne before his body was even cold. People expected you to be soft, the young son stepping into an old man's shoes. You decided very quickly that soft was dangerous. Soft got you replaced. So you became harder than he ever was, not because you wanted to hurt anyone, at least not at first, but because every advisor around you whispered the same warning. Mercy looks like weakness, and weakness gets you killed. The first law you passed sounded almost reasonable. A curfew for safety, you said. Then came a second law, banning certain songs because they carried, in your words, foreign thinking. Then a third, forcing every household to report any relative who left the country without permission, even if that relative was a child, even if that relative had been gone for 20 years. Each law on its own sounded small. Together they built a cage so tight that people stopped noticing the walls closing in, because the walls moved one careful inch at a time. Then came the punishments. Not just prison. You wanted people to feel the weight of disobedience in ways they would tell their children about, so their children would never dare try. A man caught listening to a foreign radio station lost his job, then his home, then eventually his freedom for 10 years, all for a 5-minute broadcast about weather in another country. A teacher who taught a lesson slightly different from the approved textbook disappeared for a re-education period and came back 6 months later, thinner, quieter, and unwilling to teach anything at all anymore. You told yourself this was strength. You told yourself fear was simply another word for order. But order built on fear has a strange weakness. It looks solid from the outside, right up until the moment it does not. The hunger came first, quiet and slow. Bad harvests, made worse by resources spent on missile tests and grand parades meant to show the world your strength. People in the countryside began trading anything they had left just to get enough rice for 1 more week. You heard reports about it in briefings, wrapped in careful language, numbers that sounded better than they actually were. You chose to believe the numbers, because believing them was easier than facing what they were hiding. Then the whispers started. Not loud, not organized, just tired people saying quiet things to each other in markets, in queues, in the dark. Rumors that a small group of officers, men who had sworn loyalty to your father and then to you, were growing tired of watching their own families go hungry, while state television showed banquets held in your honor. You heard about it, and instead of asking why, instead of wondering if maybe, just maybe, something needed to change, you did the only thing you knew how to do. You made more laws. You banned private gatherings of more than 5 people, calling them a security risk. You increased the punishment for disrespecting leadership until even a poorly timed silence in a public speech could be reported as a crime. You ordered new statues built in every town, larger than the last, as if height could replace loyalty. And it worked for a while, in the way fear always works for a while. There was a night, not long before everything changed, when you gave a speech to a massive crowd gathered in the main square. You made a joke, something small, something your father used to say to soften a hard announcement. You expected the usual roar of laughter, timed and rehearsed the way applause always was. Instead, silence. Just for a second, but you felt it in your chest like a dropped stone. Thousands of faces staring back at you, and not one of them daring to laugh. Not because the joke was bad, but because somewhere in that crowd, laughing at the wrong moment had once gotten someone arrested, and no one wanted to risk being that example again. That was the night you understood something you could not unfeel. You were no longer feared and loved together, the way your father claimed to be. You were just feared. And a leader who is only feared is standing on ground that is already starting to crack beneath him, even if he cannot hear it yet. The officers who had been whispering did not stay quiet forever. Word came in fast one morning, panic in every voice around you. A portion of the army, tired of enforcing hunger while living comfortably themselves, had turned. Not all of them, just enough. Enough to open gates that should have stayed shut. Enough to let ordinary people, farmers, teachers, mothers who had buried children too young, walk straight past checkpoints that used to shoot first and ask questions never. You made one final law that morning, in a shaking hand, doubling the punishment for anyone caught near the palace without written permission. It did not matter anymore. Paper cannot stop a crowd that has already decided it has nothing left to lose. And that brings you back to the door, back to the cracking wood, the storm of voices, the guards who vanished right when you needed them the most, back to running through your own kitchen in bare feet, back to the back door you never thought you'd need, back to the cold morning air on your skin for one hopeful second before the stone hit the side of your head and the world went white and sideways. You are on the ground now. You can feel it again. The cold stone path beneath you, the ringing in your ears louder than the crowd itself. Feet are getting closer. Someone is holding a wooden stick, raised, ready. You try to move and your body will not listen. This is it, you think. After all the laws, all the fear, all the silence you built brick by brick, this is how it actually ends, in your own backyard, on the ground, unable to even lift your arms to protect your face. The stick comes down, and then, somehow, gently, a hand is on your shoulder instead, shaking you. Soft, but urgent. Wake up, you're going to be late. Your eyes snap open, and it takes a full second to understand that you are not on cold stone anymore. You are in your own bed, tangled in soaked, heavy sheets, your whole body slick with sweat like you just ran for your life. Because in your mind, you actually did. Your heart is still pounding the same rhythm it was pounding in the dream, refusing to believe it is safe now. Your wife is sitting beside you, her hand still on your shoulder, and her face is not calm. She looks worried, Really worried. The kind of worried that comes from watching someone thrash and mutter in their sleep for longer than she'd like to admit. You were saying something about a door, she says quietly. You kept saying, don't let them in. You sit up slowly, your breathing uneven, your hands trembling slightly as you press them against your face, half expecting to feel a wound where the stone hit you. There is nothing there, no blood, no bruise, just your own skin, damp and shaking. The missile testing ceremony, she reminds you gently, glancing at the clock. You're already almost late. For a moment you just sit there, caught between two worlds, one where crowds screamed for your blood, and one where your biggest problem this morning is being a few minutes behind schedule. The relief hits you first, a wave so strong it almost feels like dizziness. Then, right behind it, something else arrives, quieter, but heavier. Because even now, awake, safe, with your wife's hand still resting on your arm, you cannot fully shake the feeling that the dream was not really a warning about some other version of you. It was a warning about exactly who you already are, if you are not careful. Every small law that sounds reasonable today, every quiet punishment that feels justified in the moment, every silence in a crowd you tell yourself is simply respect instead of fear. You get out of bed anyway. You get dressed anyway. Because the day, and the ceremony, and the world outside are all still waiting, the same way they always are, whether you are ready or not. But as you walk out the door this time, the real one, the one that opens easily under your own hand, you find yourself glancing back at your wife's worried face for just a second longer than usual, and for the very first time, you actually wonder what kind of leader you want to become, before someone else's dream about you starts to feel a little too much like a memory.